Hi there, this is Adrienne Prince with Team Gaia, where we encourage you to be an earth-shifting ninja through activating your secret superpowers and the divine knowing that you have within. Today, I'd like to speak with a girlfriend of mine from Facebook named Allie, who had a very extraordinary and, might I even say, miraculous experience just 10 days ago, is it?
I
And
believe so.
it was so unusual, and the conclusions that it's bringing her to are so unusual that I asked if she'd like to be interviewed, and she was willing. So hey, Allie, what would you like to tell us about what happened?
Well, I almost died, and yet I'm here to tell the story. I was going to a music festival called Shangri-La. And at the time, I didn't really know much about even what Shangri-La was, the book written in 1933. Now I do. I don't know if that had some type of energetic force with that, but that's where I was headed. I was on the road to Shangri-La, and that's in Minnesota. And I was going down I-29 in South Dakota, a little bit outside of Sioux Falls. And I had stopped at a rest stop to use the restroom, and I got back on the road, and I was driving, and I was listening to a song, thinking about Lucifer and Satan and how he controls the music, she controls the music industry. I'd gone down the rabbit hole a little bit, a week or two before that, learning about the Temple of Set and how it's rooted in hip hop, and thinking about some people I've known that, displayed Illuminati symbols, and how I think they're compromised, and kind of the eeriness of being that close to what we might say the Illuminati. And this is all in my mind as I'm driving. I see some lights from a car. We're I-29. I believe it's like a two-lane highway. So going north and south. I saw a car coming, flashing their lights, and I just noticed it. At that point, I feel like time kind of shifted for me to be a little bit more mindful. And I think that's kind of when I felt like I went into the twilight zone a little bit, where I remember all the details very specifically. And at that moment, like I said, I was thinking of Lucifer and Satan and listening to this song. And one of the lyrics was Phoenix from the Ashes. I remember that was one of the last words I heard before this accident. I looked in my rear view mirror, and just like in the movies we might see where people see like the cars coming at you full speed and behind, I saw that. And this calmness, this knowing of okay, like maybe okay of accepting the circumstance, of accepting this is what's happening. Maybe also inviting a spirit, an angelic spirit, to help me, because I looked up the definition of okay, because that okay was very profound, like it was very moving. And that also means an agreement, the definition of okay. With that, the knowledge of maybe just my reflexes or spiritual guidance, but I turned my wheels to the right, and I was already in the right-hand lane. So it was inevitable that I was going to be hit, because we were slowing down for this other accident. And at that point, I got hit, and I remember thinking, oh, shoot, like I was trying to get away. I just remember, but when I got hit on impact, I went up above, and I thought of my cats who always ground me, and my cats also, that love and this presence of love and a deep, deep love. But I was very tall. I guess my consciousness, I don't know if I fully left my body, but it was like a mind expansion of going up, very high up. And I drove the car high up. So I'm high up driving my car. I don't even know if I am at this point, or a spirit, time, reality, quantum timelines. I don't know. I probably didn't even say that correctly, but I drove my car, and I saw it as an object, but it was a car, and I had to navigate around that. And it just guided me to the side of the road, on the side of the freeway. The two cars behind me got knocked off. I looked to my right, and they got blown off the road by a van. A big black Dodge Ram van had plowed into everyone. And I got out of my car, stunned, but there's people that were in these other cars. So I get out and I walk over. I'm scared because I don't know what to expect. And there's two families. One family gets out and they're fine and they're calm. And then I hear a voice of a mother screaming, help, help. She gets out on her own, but these cars are totaled. All the doors are smashed in. And she goes, help my babies, my babies. And she gets out, she's dazed. So I hop in the car, not knowing if these babies are going to be dead or bloody or what I'm going to see, or if this car is going to blow up. And I get in and they're screaming. One's in a car seat, the other two I don't believe are. And a volunteer firefighter came over and got into the car and got the two other children out. I'm shaking really bad, trying to get this car seat, the seatbelt undone. And I was not doing a good job at all. I pushed the button, finally my brain focused and I pushed the red button and the seatbelt undid itself. And at that point, right at that moment, somebody pries open the back door, another volunteer firefighter, a lady, and she grabs that little child. And like I said, it's miraculous that they weren't killed or hurt, considering this car was coming at 80 miles an hour. Come to find out, that first accident involved an Outback, a Subaru Outback, similar to my car.
Same color?
I don't know. It just said Outback in the article. I would have been there at that first accident, but I'd stopped at a rest stop, like I said, earlier. So I was 15 minutes behind schedule.
And so accidents of a similar nature, being rear-ended at great speed?
No, actually it was I guess they're both really bad. That one was a car, this is what the article said, a car had tried to pass this Outback and clipped it. And when they clipped it, that Outback rolled over into oncoming traffic all the way onto, southbound on the freeway. And from what I was told, nobody hit that car. So there's some type of presence of both energies, one a force of death and the other the force of life. And the fact that the severity of both of these accidents, of a rollover into oncoming traffic and nobody hitting that car is miraculous. And they lived. I think they had to go to the hospital, but they lived. And then for us, there was 5 cars involved in my particular accident that happened supposedly, and we can get into the timelines, but 15 or 20 minutes later.
And you said you're outside of a town called Sweetwater? Or did I make that up?
No. It was outside of like Sioux Falls. The exit was it was Coleman exit. So it was like a small little town, maybe like 30 miles outside of Sioux Falls.
And how much further ahead was this other accident?
3 miles.
Wow. Okay.
And one of the things I noticed, so I looked at, they generated an article about, shortly after this whole thing happened. And that article states that the first accident happened at 2:06. The spokesman for public safety for the state of South Dakota said that the first 911 call was put in at 2:06. So I was wondering, that's a 2-hour difference. From ours was about 4:25 roughly. So that's about, almost 2.5 hours from, if that's the case. I understand it's a rural area, but I'm wondering why there wasn't a sign up notifying, like typically if there's an accident, if that's it. I had contacted the sheriff department of Moody County, which is where the accident happened. And they said the first 911 call for that accident was at 4:04 p.m. So there's a 2-hour difference between these two state agencies. I understand things can get kind of lost in the shuffle, with bureaucratic, undertakings, but it should be pretty black and white with 911 call logs,
Right, right. So for some reason, the newspaper article is giving a different time than the 911 call log.
Yeah, well, that at least that the county is saying it happened. I don't have an actual documentation. They said I have to subpoena that information, so I don't have tangibility of that. But verbally, the sheriff told me that the first 911 call log was 4:04 for that.
And judging by how little traffic had accumulated, it would make sense that it had maybe only been 20 minutes.
Yes. Yes. So it could just be, government agencies just, not getting their information correct. And,
What was the time that they said 242?
In the article, it said 209.
209. Okay. So we could look that up, because it's possible that sometimes they use the newspapers for their comms.
Mhm.
And so maybe the 209 means something.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it could
Mhm.
mean, whoops, near miss, didn't get the job done.
Mhm.
Or you know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
could look that up, what different
Mhm.
meanings of what the 209, why they would choose to use that.
Well, and also, so if we're going to kind of get into the number realm, when I looked at this article, so the first thing was well, actually, the first thing I noticed in the article was it doesn't talk about.
What was the first thing that happened that made you go, huh, I ought to look into this? The two Subaru Outbacks, or what was it?
Well, that I think is, as I was reading the article, the Outback was like, huh, okay. But also it was, they go, a 70-year-old was driving a Ford Escape and hit a 77-year-old driving an Outback. So I saw the 777 in there. It said that there was a passenger in the Outback, and it didn't mention their age. So typically they always give ages. They could say that they were just giving the ages of the drivers, but the 777 was my big red flag to make me look. With that, because I love numbers, I'm just naturally, I guess, gifted at numbers. I was like, wait a second. Today's September 2nd. September 2nd is 9/2. Wait a second. I'm on I-29. That's the inverted date, or, it's the date inverted. And, numbers have energy. And, 2 and 9 is 11. So that would be 11/11.
And you said 209 was the date they gave in the newspaper.
They said, or 206, my apologies. So I was okay. But the 6 and the 9, they can invert a lot of the times.
Right. Okay.
So my apologies. Yeah, it's 206, whatever it was. Yeah, it was 206 that they said. And
so you said 9/2 and then I-29.
Yep. And then a couple of days later, so I kind of sat with this. I mean, it was a lot, to kind of take this all in, just with the trauma itself, but then kind of with the numbers. So and possibly.
Were you out of your body before the impact occurred?
No, I think the impact did it, because I knew it was going to happen, and the severity of it, that when the impact happened, that's when I went above, high up, and I remained high up till I drove to the side of the road. And then I just recently, and I sent that to you, is I was thinking, it was Keanu's birthday that day. And, they use actors for, different meanings, and they hold different, symbology. And that was another red flag when I was like, because I knew like, I'm going to find out more about September 2nd. Like, what is September 2nd? What is what is any significant events that happened on September 2nd? And so Keanu's birthday was that day. And and my accident happened at mile marker 113. At least in the article, it states 113 is where the accident happened. And, Neo's birthday is 3/11. So that's inverted. And, his, a lot of people know that, his passport in the Matrix expires on September 11th, which is 9/11. And I'm born 11/9. All of these are inverted dates, every single one, from, the highway I'm driving on to the date that I'm driving, to Keanu's birthday, to, the mile marker 113. Like, and also I thought was interesting, it's mind blowing, but he was in the movie Speed. And if I recall right, that's about something that just keeps going, right? Like it's a bus that just, has no brakes or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact details of that movie.
That's pretty much the premise. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's exactly what was happening with this van. And the guy, speaking of the driver of this van, he got out fine. And a lot of delivery drivers can, and I will say this, so I don't want to like, grab at straws. I'm always trying to have something mean something. So I always like to be logical too, but they can kind of, because they're kind of peppy in their nature. And I think he was like a delivery driver, possibly. But also kind of, I got this like stunt driver vibe, like looking back on that. I'm not saying he is, but it was just, he was pretty peppy. He wasn't shocked like everybody else. He wasn't.
And was he apologetic? Was he freaking out? Was he crying?
No, he was not.
If it was me, I would be like, I would be freaking out, checking everybody, like throwing myself on the ground, going, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but no.
He said, is anybody hurt? Because someone went over and got him. I actually went and got him a baby wipe because he had a little bit of blood on his hand. That's the only thing he sustained. I think I sent you the photo of his car because he came in sideways. So his whole van was coming in at 80 miles. He said, I think he'd mentioned, but it was very like, is everyone okay? But it was, it was just odd. I understand we all react to trauma differently. So I'll take that into consideration, just like I'll take into consideration that delivery drivers, UPS drivers have that kind of like stunt driver vibe because they're just kind of peppy, and that's how I perceive a stunt driver to be, is a little peppy. So yeah, but he wasn't at all phased. Everyone else was very much like, there was a couple other cars that were involved. Like I had mentioned to you earlier, I just find it interesting, the cars that were involved were 2 black behind me and 2 white in front of me. So it was a black and white sort of thing going on.
What color is your car?
My car is green.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I also have the Freemason sign on my car as a joke. I had it on there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Where's that? Where do you put that?
So it didn't, that's the side that didn't get hit. So that was on the right-hand side of my back of my car. And so the left-hand side is the one that got hit. The driver's side.
You were turning your wheels.
Yes, I was turning my wheels. And he said he was working, and I understand people space out. I mean, it's kind of scary that there's so many people behind the wheel driving, made me realize, like, oh God. But, he was working and he's higher up. So when you're in a van and you're higher up, I mean, if I could see to slow down, I understand things can happen. I think as drivers, we've all had very close calls where we have to slam on our brakes, right? Because we just didn't see somebody stop quickly and ahead of us. I understand. And that's why I said to him, I understand this can happen. I was actually very kind to the guy because, I get things happen, right? But he was on the job, which generally speaking, you're typically more alert, right? Because you're on the job. I'm curious, we don't have the police report yet. I will definitely be going through that in great detail, looking at who is the owner of his car and, that, but there's ways around that. It's not going to necessarily say, entertainment agency or whatever, but.
Right. So, when you started putting the pieces together, it seemed to you that perhaps you had been targeted even in the first accident. But then when the first accident wasn't you, perhaps. So, and then all the numbers adding up. And so where did your mind go? What happened that you started connecting these dots?
Well, this is the thing, is I still went to the festival, mind you. So let's just take that in. I still went. And I didn't know at the time, and I still will probably continue to go. It's a great festival. It was all love. It was great. I loved it. Because I almost died and I realized, we got to live, right? Like if, like what's the point? Go home and cry and try to figure things out. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be what it's going to be. I had some pain. I'm getting some help for that. I went into my steering wheel very hard, right? Because that was a very hard hit. So I had some abdominal pain. I don't know if maybe a rib might have gone out. I pray and do energy work. After Operation Paperclip, I don't just go obviously to doctors to help me, unless it's a necessity. But I think Shangri-La is very, we can say symbolic. It was the 19th anniversary of this festival as well. And I know, cycles of 19 with the moon, with the 9/11, I don't remember what happened 19 years prior to 9/11, but I know that, like, the whole, COVID thing was 19 years after 9/11, right? So there's cycles of 19 in the moon of sacrifice and rituals. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much that plays into anything.
What's your age?
44, and that's the time the call was put in. So the first call from Moody County Sheriff was 4:04 p.m. So yeah, I didn't mention that earlier, but because there's so many synchronicities with things and numbers, and also, I think I might have sent you, but like I had come home and I've experienced death. I'm a Scorpio. We all experience death in this realm, but songs come to me when it's very serious times, right? And so I was just kind of got on, and it wasn't like just come to me. I guess I searched for it, but I like rear view mirror, right? And so Tupac comes up because he has a rear view mirror, and I listened to him like, that doesn't resonate with me, Tupac doesn't. And then this song that is like, I think an anime song, or I don't even know what genre you put it in, but it's Dawn's Light as seen from the rear view mirror. And the artist is death defying. And my middle name is Dawn. And when I went to this festival, someone gave me a book called The Coming of the Dawn, which I have. I'll send you a copy of that or a picture of that. So that's interesting, like the dawn. And then I started thinking of Aleister Crowley and the dawn, like that ties into the whole occult thing of dawn. I don't even know that much about that. I'm just kind of,
The Golden Dawn, yeah.
Yes, the Golden Dawn, yeah. So, and then also, I think, too, if we're going to get in the deeper spiritual things, is I played that song, because I was like, okay, and it's just not a song I would listen to because there's, more like a electronic music. But what came on right after that song, I don't know, Spotify or whatever I was listening to, YouTube, was a song from the Lost Boys. And it's the theme song from the Lost Boys. And it's "Thou shalt not fall, thou shalt not die. Thou shalt not fear, thou shalt not kill." And that song went whoo to me, right? And in that song has the word Shangri-La in it, which is like even more. I'm like, okay, So I got the Lost Boys because I know how it all works. And I wanted to know when that song came on. Like, when does this song come on? Like, what's the meaning of this song? And I think I watched the Lost Boys. I know it's like a cult fan movie thing. Some people really love it. And the whole vampire thing. And so it comes on, at least what I noticed, maybe there might've been, but it comes on very, twice in the movie. Well, first in the intro it comes on, but it comes on twice. The first is when he succumbs to being a vampire and he has sex with the girl. And then it comes on when he defeats the vampire, the bad vampire. So it's kind of like this duality of succumbing to what you might call evil, and then when you defeat evil. But somehow the Lost Boys, for me, energetically, speaks to me. And I know vampires mean more than what they actually told to us in cinema. I don't even quite know. I just know there's a little bit more to it. I don't know if you do, but like,
Sure.
there's some.
Yeah, there's some even real world implications, right? Because some people are actually vampires, and we know that these Illuminati people are cannibals.
Yeah.
And blood carries the essence of a person. So there's always been a fascination with people with blood, especially because, yeah, you can also clone a person from a drop of blood, probably. Your DNA's in there just as much as anywhere else. So it sounds to me, though, and so wait. So logistically, how did you end up getting a car to go to the festival?
Because my car never hit anything, so it was drivable.
Oh, okay. So it was not totaled like these other cars. So that inner guidance really steered you right.
It did. I'm humbled by it, like so humbled. And the two white cars in front of me didn't get damaged much either. So the two black cars did, totaled, wiped out. But the two white cars, one had their back window completely taken out. She was a young girl and she had a dog with her. And she just stayed in her car. She was totally shell-shocked because she was in the left-hand lane, which means she didn't have any place to maneuver. She just got the full impact. But surprisingly enough, she didn't, I mean, her back windshield was completely blown out and she had some rear damage, but it looked like her car was drivable. And then the other car, I think, just had like a little dent in it, the other white car. Yeah. So I was like third in line as far as being, having my car, messed up or whatever.
So he hurt 5 cars altogether?
5 cars total, including the van. But if we didn't include the van, it would just be, well, actually, I guess 5 cars total with his.
Would be the 6th.
It would be the 6th. It said in the article it was 5 though. But when I recall being there was a car that had like a little dent in it, unless they were just staying they were in front of me though. So maybe they weren't even a part of it and that dent was already there. But I just presumed that they had gotten that little dent in their bumper from whatever. But I didn't hit anything. No, I got hit from behind. And like I said, something took my car and just as I'm consciously high up and drove it to the side. And yeah.
So it sounds like this would definitely be an initiatory experience. That is to say, if you, with all the numbers lining up and stuff, if you thought that life was normal and simple cause and effect, this is kind of throwing you for a loop and making you wonder if you were caught up for a moment in this game between the dark and the light.
And it's interesting that you say initiation process, because so I have an alchemical therapist who I think is an open Luciferian, to be truthful, right? He likes Alice Bailey, but he's phenomenal. He's great. And he mentioned to me, he was great. I mean, I did a therapy session last week with him. And he mentioned how this was an initiation process, and 777 actually means rebirth. It's a rebirth. And that what guided me is way stronger than what was in my rear view mirror, or the forces at, and that it's time for me to look at death in the rear view mirror from what I'm going to have to face in the future. And also that little girl is actually myself, in the sense of trying to save that little girl inside of me, and also the future children who I may not be able to save in the coming times, which really sat with me on a very deep level.
Interesting. Sure. So I would say you might keep a dream journal, because maybe from now on, I can see you having, remember, I'm a little psychic. I can see you having 2 really strong dreams sometime in the next few days. The kinds where you wake up and go, was that really a dream? That felt so real. So keep track of them, because I think what's going to happen is that your life and your calling may become really, really apparent now. Like this could have been your initiatory wake-up call of, we've got you. And sometimes a near-death experience without actually crossing over, but just like that kind of close call is there to like turn the page in your awareness. Like there's going to be before that happened and after that happened. You know what I mean? Like a watershed in your life. So just watch your dreams. I think that you might be starting to get called for some kind of higher duty. I wouldn't be surprised if all of that extravagance, all those numbers and all that lining up could serve you to put you into your next big phase of life. And while it's possible that there was like a real life Luciferian motive, like targeting you, what I would think would be much more likely is that on the inner levels, that yes, your soul, just like everyone's soul, is a prize possession to be won, and they try to harvest what they can, and nobody died in this experience, or the other one, hopefully
nobody died in that one either.
So this was a bad day for death. Like death scored 0, thank goodness. And we all got a chance to really look at how things operate in this strange interdimensional causality realm. But it really sounds to me like this entire extravagance was because it was time to wake you up and activate you into your higher purpose.
So you don't think, and I guess, I've been outspoken about, certain, like Zionism, you don't think it was a Mossad hit?
No, but I can see why you would think that for sure, especially with a black van. If it was like flat black, or, it just seems like it almost seems so archetypal.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure that those powers that be wouldn't have minded taking you out. Maybe they didn't expect that you were going to bounce back and come back stronger. Um, I do wonder sometimes how all that works. It seems like with all of the intricacies of the numerology that these things must be put together on a different plane of existence. It's not like they're like, okay, you got to hit the gas now so that everything lines up in this really intricate numerology. No, the numerology comes to light later. And it's because it was a crossing of certain ley lines, you know what I mean? Certain energetic time space ley lines that was like a point of vulnerability. So, and since intention is so powerful, all it takes is someone on some dimensional realm, even your own higher self, you know, if it's a wake up call, going, you know, putting a little pin there, and then everything, you know, that November 9th was also the supposed date of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Mhm.
So it's also my sister's birthday. I'm her big sister, much bigger, much older. And so yeah, and those are powerful numbers too. Those are witchy, warlocky numbers. You know, it's very auspicious. So I would tend to think that although the other side could have taken you out, it's like a game of ping pong, kind of, you know, like they're going at it hard and they're playing with everything they've got. And we're kind of in the crosshairs. And especially those of us who are called for like medicine work, you know, by medicine meaning healing work, not just, you know, administering medicine or taking medicine, but also being medicine. So those of us who are the medicine, we are often in the crosshairs for sure. But I
Wow.
think there's nothing but good to come of this. And I don't think that, yeah, I just think by your existence, it's like, there's like the timelines of our lives are so fascinating.
They are. And it felt like when I went out of my body, like it was like a quantum reality, different realms happening at once, like converging in a sense. And I was going to ask you, you said about to look at like the 206. I was just wondering if, you know, cause like when you were saying it, you know, sometimes, you know, it could be a code, how they use for, you know, a miss or not. I seem like you're kind of deviating from that sort of way of thinking, that it wasn't necessarily a hit per se on the physical realm.
Right,
Right.
right. We'd have to check because I've definitely seen newspaper articles where it seemed as if they were communicating comms. You know what I mean? That they would change certain details and they would be talking to their own people using the newspaper article. So that would be like feeding the theory that this was a hit. But it's also possible to how do I say this? You know how people feel like, ooh, our technology is watching us and it's always offering things that we only just thought about. Like I thought about a pair of running shoes and I didn't even say anything. I didn't click on anything. And all of a sudden you see an ad for running shoes. I really think that this is all quantum. And you know what I mean? That it's not that our technology is watching us per se, though it is. It's more that our technology is serving the game, the light and the dark, and in very, very subtle ways that are more like we've become more observant as humans in the past 30 years than we used to be, like when we were growing up. Like when we were growing up, people weren't, if something happened that was unusual, it was called a coincidence. And, you know, people would explore coincidences as sort of like a matter of amusement. But now we take coincidences very seriously and call them synchronicities. And we are like not shy about finding, you know, subtle causal connections. And we all notice like what was the music that was playing at that moment, stuff that we didn't pay attention to like 40 years ago, right? Like that just wouldn't have been considered part of the story. But we've become more evolved and more sensitive and noticing what each moment is comprised of. And I think that it's all part of like this wonderful process that we're in. The game does get rough. I call Earth kind of like a rough rugby game where both sides are just playing full out and they're tackling each other and people are caught in the crossfire and they're dying and things like that. But it's still an angel devil rugby game here on earth, but we're getting smarter about how to actually play it and not be the ball. You know, we're not just getting carried here and there and kicked here and there and like, hoarded by one team or the other. We're actually becoming independent free players.
And that's my whole process in the last couple of years, is about being sovereign, not on a political level and like, filing paperwork to be sovereign, but like, spiritually sovereign, what that means, but the 777, I just find it very interesting that was even put into the article, and I know there's light and dark to 777, right? Like Crowley, wrote a book about 777. And yet I think there's also maybe some divine aspects. Are you familiar with the 777?
Oh yes. 777 is one of the most powerfully positive numbers as well.
Oh. Okay.
So that it's just like rugby, like both teams want to claim sacred geometry for themselves. Both teams want to claim sacred numerology for themselves. They're taking the raw matter of quantum material, and it's all about the intentionality. So the dark magicians are gaining this the mana, the life force for themselves and then turning it for their ends. And the light magicians and the light workers are gaining those forces and turning it to our will, the desire for more freedom on earth and more connectedness and more love. But they also, it's driven me nuts for like the past dozen years when I find all my favorite symbols are also appropriated by the dark side. Rainbows, unicorns, starlight, sparkles, all the things that I love so much and that were meant for liberation, also got appropriated by them to further more mind control, and they'll use it in the entertainment industry as like triggers. You know what I mean? So that drove me nuts for about a dozen years, how both sides claim the same symbology. But the good part is, at least in my view, that it's all about the intentionality. It's about where are you coming from? What do you stand for? Right.
Exactly. I agree. Now, what are your thoughts, or do you know anything about Shangri-La? I heard it has to do with like the hybrids and the Nephilim and in Tibet. Like I know I kind of took it, but it kind of all ties together. But
okay. So, so it's interesting because if we just take it to the gut level, Shangri-La is this idea of 5D Earth, basically, of a place where people don't age, a place where everybody's walking in love, where the physical realm is optimized and becomes more than it was. But and so I live in California, and one town called Ojai is often referred to as Shangri-La because it's way up in the mountains. It's like a special place, and the Theosophists had a headquarters there. Krishnamurti, who was Alice Bailey's, it was Helena Blavatsky's. He was like her wonder child. Like she found him in India and turned him into a guru when he was like 19 or something. And he did end up rebelling very softly. But yeah, so the Theosophists and Blavatsky were up in Ojai in Shangri-La.
Well, it's interesting because I went to Ojai Valley Inn, and the Ojai Valley Inn, my dad did a golf tournaments, and I had the most profound dream there. I'll never forget it. It was 2005. I actually still have the note still on Ojai Valley Inn, and it was like, it had to do with death and like 3 heads coming from the water being washed ashore. I mean, it's a little abstract just to kind of put into words on this, in this video, but I just have to say it was very, and I found out that someone told me that was like old ancient burial grounds, that area that it was built on.
Yeah, there's definitely ghostly activity right there in that river valley for sure. There was some pretty interesting stuff going on. I lived right next to the Ojai Valley Inn, probably in 2004, though we might have both been there at the same time. I lived in an apartment complex right next door to the service entrance. And so that's interesting.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's referred to as the Shangri-La in America. And of course, yes, the original Shangri-La was this place where like the Hunzas and the Tibetans, like they just lived a very beautiful life, and it was far removed from the Western mindset. So I don't know much about the Nephilim or tampering, but I mean, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. They seem to find all of our holy spots, including our sacred springs, and our ley lines and things like that, and try and turn it to their storyline. So for me, what I think we're really having a battle about, besides these heavenly forces using us as their bowling balls and pins, is we're having a war of storylines and a war of timelines, where who's going to grab the narrative? What narrative are we actually living in? And light walkers or way showers, we're trying to sort of walk this middle line where we see what the agenda is and we're choosing a different agenda, and we're trying to stay in that middle zone where reality is actually created, right? We're trying to stay in that true quantum creation zone. So we kind of pay attention to what the other side's doing with our numbers, but we're also actively working to create the new, right? Because that's the only place that reality really exists, is in that place where the ship's bow hits the water and the timelines part. You know what I mean? That's the only place that really is creative, right?
Well, I felt like that's when I came out of that experience moments after. It felt like that, what you just described. I felt the most alive I've ever been, ever in my life. Not that I want to experience that again, per se, but I will say that I can't deny it. I felt the most alive, and I could see why the occult plays with death or has death rituals. Absolutely.
Rush.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And it's powerful.
Yes, very powerful. Another thing I wanted to say before I forgot, you mentioned ley lines, and I always look at numbers on highways, which I did with the I-29, but I did a map and I zoomed out to kind of see where the highway was and it's actually, which I think is interesting. I mean, granted, there's a lot of them because it's like, it looks like just, off ramps, right? But it's in the shape of a diamond. So right there was a shape of a diamond. And I thought about how I believe since Freemasons, designed our whole country and they know about the ley lines, that I bet certain places on these highways are more, I don't know if you want to call them vortexes or portals or places for sacrifices, at certain points on highways that could generate some energy, harvesting.
Well, I've often wondered, why did they number the highways the way that they did? Why is this highway given this number instead of, why wasn't the one that goes across the country just highway number 1, or, and the word like interstate, it's something that can really be played with, for sure. It just makes you really wonder. Or state route, SR. I do, if Masons have a guiding hand in having created the interstate highway system, for instance, then for sure there's some coding in those numbers. So I-40 goes this way, I-25 goes this way. I-40 is also known as Highway 66. Right. So, and then they romanticize this idea about Highway 66 being something really special and important because it was from the time before the interstates. And it just makes you wonder. Everything in pop culture right now has been ruined for me. The thing about jukebox and malts and Elvis and Marilyn and all the things that they kind of wanted you to get strung out and like nostalgia about are all freaking Masonic Illuminati codes. It's so annoying.
And that's how I feel about hip hop and rap, and even like, the music of what I went to, reggae music or whatever, it's controlled opposition, right? So it's kind of like, once again, that polarity of, music.
Like Bob Marley being such a powerful messenger for the light, but isn't it sad he died of cancer? you know, like isn't the best hero is a dead hero, you know. They are such sick fucks, you know. I hate to say it, but they really are. They're just sick. And if we could see, if we really had those magic glasses, you know, like in They Live, if we really had the magic sunglasses to where we could see all the agendas blatantly, we'd probably be shocked and nauseated.
I already am nauseated just by, you know, and it's funny because when I first woke up, and, you know, you first hear of Q, it's like the first thing, at least for me and a lot of people that first woke up, is you hear Q and you kind of, you know, decipher, you know, and then some of us hopefully graduate past that. But, you know, they're known for, like, you know, like they're like the Satanists and the baby eaters. And, you know, it sounds so extreme and so crazy. And, like, you know, most conspiracy theorists get deemed that, like that, they get put in that box. And that's what it's intended for, right? That's how it's intended.
That's why they made it.
That's why they made it. But there's truth in that. They always have truth. And I've learned, like, you know, in the Garden of Eden, Lilith, or Satan, was guarding the tree of knowledge, right? And still does, you know, in the rabbit hole. But there's always a kernel of truth. I heard something that, like, Satan can't produce a lie without some truth. Like, there has to be a kernel of truth in it. And that actually makes it more deceptive, you know?
Because the truth in us responds to that little glimmer of truth, and then we accidentally swallow the whole thing.
Yes. Yeah. And they actually base most of, like, even like the psyops and the news off of that same premise, you know, throwing in a little bit of truth and then the rest is propaganda. So it's a lot, you know, and it's a lot to let go of everything that we've been taught from every angle, you know, music and religion and, you know, just everything, politics, you know, history,
feminism. I mean, like sociology, like every single thing that we once thought was one thing is turning out to be another. And what I love about it is that for so many years, I thought, oh, the people who, you know, oppose abortion or are born again Christians or think that rock music is satanic, those people are trying to ruin our fun and they're hysterical. And of course, as I get older, I'm like, oh, no, they're actually pointing out some pretty valid stuff. So what I love, and so I went from being, you know, with the Green Party and running for office to standing you know, side by side with the Patriots. And I love the fact that it's like this, the snake swallowing its tail. It's like I've come full circle. You know, I understand now that, or the mirror image where you look at things from the exact opposite of where you did look at, and you see the truth even brighter. And I just love that. I didn't just stay in one camp. When truth led me, I went and found that the other camp had a whole lot of truth going on too. They weren't just weird, mean, judgmental baddie bads, you know. And I love that because it coming from the heart. So the heart's all about creating wholeness, you know. So wholeness means that the person that you thought was your enemy is actually your best friend. And so I'm super grateful that I'm capable of growing.
That means I have some growing to do because I'm a Scorpio. I'm like, yeah, they're still my enemy.
I know, right? Well, the fake ones might be the ones who are hiding, the mega pastors who are hiding in plain sight and actually still trafficking children on the side. That's not good.
I was thinking more personally, on a personal level, you know, my quote unquote enemies, you know.
Oh, like yeah. No, for your mom to have become a born again Christian after she had encountered warlocks and stuff, she was probably scared straight. She probably saw something or knew something or felt something that did not feel aligned with life, and ran straight into Christianity. And that was probably a pretty good thing. But then people do distort it with their own understanding or their own ego or their pastor's ego. Yeah, it's just another program for some people.
Well, and I've had, you know, some Christians, one in particular who, you know, I think they're well intended, but after this whole situation happened, was reaching out to me and, you know, saying, believe in Jesus. And, you know, I said, you know, he died at 33. Like, I can't get over it. Could it be 32? Could it be 34? 33. There's some thumbprints all over that.
Well, maybe it was a Masonic hit.
Very very true, I guess. But I can't, and I said this to her, and I meant this in my soul. I can't believe in something because I'm scared to go to hell, because that's fear. That's not faith. Like that's fear. Now, if I can come to terms, which I haven't, but like, to come to terms that I believe in Christ and he's my savior and he died for my sins. And there's a lot of tenets of Christianity I absolutely agree with. And, biblical prophecy is playing out. So I actually know more about the Bible than I did 2 years ago. I never wanted to be a biblical scholar. Not that I'm a biblical scholar now, but I know a lot more than I used to. But, I said it to her, and I was also saying it to myself when I said it to her is, that feels weird to me. Like, okay, I'll believe in Christ. Okay, I don't want to go to hell. Because
right. No, I don't think that God wants us to do that. I think God wants us to come, frankly, almost as equals. Wants us to come. How do I say? The way I feel about Jesus is like my buddy did a solid. You know what I mean? Like he was up against the wall and he did this like ultimate work. But you got to come as an equal. And a lot of people, there's no room in the control system for people to come as equals.
Exactly.
You got to come on your knees and like crawl and grovel, and that doesn't seem very good.
Well, and it's also, and I'm sure you've heard, like, and I don't know, there's like little bits and pieces I picked up in the rabbit hole, but there's speculation of, Jesus being like the magic mushroom, or Jesus being like the scapegoat, the Yom Kippur scapegoat, or, some say could Lucifer, there's all these different, because there is a lot of similarities between Jesus and Lucifer, different sayings. So, I don't know, like I can only take in so much, and then I have to just go bake bread and hang out with my cats, right? Like it's, and I have to go with my intuition, ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's true. And I feel like that's really what we're called to be. I think we're really called to be individual, sovereign co-creators. And that means that you've got to come to conclusions on your own. You've got to come upright and walking and enjoy with your eyes wide open, and just the activation of the heart. See, I feel like the heart's kind of our common ground. The heart is the earth, and it is the one thing that all living creatures have in common, and even rocks and minerals have a pulse. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's some things that don't require dogma, you know what I mean, that will liberate us too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like this little guy. Say hi. Where's my hello. It's funny. Hello. I named my cats, I guess because I wanted to feel some sense of I don't know, you want to say power, like, once I learned all the Freemasons. So I named my cats, I'm not going to say it right, Jachin, I say that's how I say it, but I know it's not, it's a Joaquin or whatever for the one. And then I have Boaz. So I named my cat.
And that with your Freemason sticker on your car, you might have to like investigate your own past and go, did I get a Freemasonic initiation at some point?
Well, this is interesting. And I hope, like, I was joking, but I had gone to, well, first I joked around with the Attorney General 3 months ago, and I pretended to do the Freemasonic handshake with him, and I did it intentionally. And he knew, and he looked at me, and he gave those people that give you that look, like they've transferred the energy, like, but it wasn't mean, but it was like, like you're crossing lines here. And yet, like, it was a room full of, like, just down home folks waiting for him to talk about what's going to happen. And yay, and yeah, he and I's like, we're above the sea, right? Just he and I. And I thought it was funny playing games. I mean, I'm more like, as my therapist guy says, I'm like Bugs Bunny, that's how I played it.
You're punking him.
I punking him, And then I'd gone to the International Peace Gardens, which is up by Canada, the only 20 acres I can go in Canada because they're Gestapo. And I didn't realize that was all Masonic. Like, they had an Eastern Star Lodge there. They had like a Masonic hall there. So I kind of played around in that area. I was going to just go camping, right? Because that's what I love to do. I love to explore. And then come to find out, I did a video on it, but I didn't know there was a place called Masonic Island, just like 20 minutes from there. So I went to Masonic Island. And I am very determined. And I hitched a ride on a boat, and I got out to Masonic Island. And, for me, it was, monumental. To other people who were, that dropped me off. But there was like, a slab in the middle that looks like it probably could have been for sacrifice. It was like a stone thing, whatever. And so I'd had some brushes in the Dakotas with the Masons. I actually even had gone to the Masonic Lodge and talked with one of the people there, and I was joking, and this is where I need to pull it back, because I am doing it as fun and games completely. like sarcasm. Like they want to be sarcastic and mock us. You know, I was going to do, I mean, I even have, you know, the Masonic thing here that I bought at Mount Rushmore, you know, with the Black Hills gold, you know, and I said, I'm making up my own order, you know, it's my own order because, you know, women can't join. So this is my own order, you know, and so it's just a joke, whatever. And so, but I got some papers from this lady who's an Eastern Star, and she goes, well, you know, you can only join if your grandfather was. And I said, well, you know, I think my great grandpa might have been, I don't know. Come to find out, I don't think he was. But I wasn't like, I didn't sign, you know, I didn't sign like I'm going to join. I mean, I thought like, you know, I didn't go, okay, I really want to join you guys. Like, I mean, I got the paperwork and like kind of, you know, maybe, you know, whatever. And I said, maybe like, I'm a Scorpio. I'm so curious about everything that, but, and then other people on Facebook, you know, had warned me that, oh, well, that could be, then they can get you. If you join them, then you're under their rules and they can get you. And so my thing, and if they listen to this video, the Masons or whoever, that I didn't join, I didn't sign away. Like I just got the paperwork. I never signed it. My grandpa, I don't think he's a part of it. Like, I don't want to be, it was all a joke. So just FYI for the universe, for whoever, I wasn't. But I did have some close brushes with some Masons, you know?
Yeah, so you might be reincarnated Mason. It's possible that you're like, no, this is my turf. I'm gonna, you know, I think that there's definitely some dynamic. There's some drama going on with the Masons. I had a great great grandfather who was a governor of New Mexico, and for a very brief time, it seems he was part of the Masonic Lodge, which is this giant pink church in the middle of Santa Fe. It looks like a sandcastle, but it's painted hot pink. And you seldom see anyone go in or come out, but it's giant and it's in the middle of town. So it's like kind of this weird question mark right in the middle of town. But I went and visited one day, and I could have sworn he had been a member, but they didn't have him on record, or he was all a member all the way up until like 1898, and then he just dropped out. So I thought, maybe he saw or heard or something that didn't work with his truth, and he gave him the shine and just like left them, which I thought was really interesting. So I have this strange little Freemasonic thread running through my family history too, where I kind of wonder, well, not two, but I mean, since we're talking about it, where I kind of wonder who was involved and what were they thinking. It's like not just something that you join, it's something that you also have an opinion about, and something that maybe you might get, once you find out what they're really up to, you might drop out. Like this great grandfather of mine, seems like he just dropped out one day. So I don't know what that was all about.
Well, and I find it because I've traveled a lot. I mean, you know, just to little towns, and most of these Masonic lodges are all like dilapidated. So it's like, I wonder, how is it that they quote unquote rule the world or like have so much influence? I mean, do they have like Zoom meetings? Do they like meet in colleges and that's where they recruit? And like, I know it's a simple question. It's not even really, you know, a high-minded question per se, but it's like, they're all dilapidated buildings. Like, where do they, I mean, sure, the one in DC, you know, the Scottish Rite, and the one in Fargo's, you know, a little bit more well-kept and seems to be active to a degree. And they have the Shriners right next to it. So a big building. So Fargo seems to be, North Dakota is actually pretty interesting. Once you kind of get into like the history of North Dakota a little bit, you know, there's just a lot of, I would say, you know, Monsanto's here, there's, you know, Germans.
It's possible that with the advent of the automobile and interstate you know, freeway travel, that the Masons all go to the center, the bigger town Masonic lodges, because the larger town Masonic lodges are still pretty opulent and pretty well kept and pretty active. So it's possible that, you know, they wanted to have this thing where they had people stationed in every little town and every little outpost, but maybe those have been neglected because they're going to the larger towns, that it's easier to travel 60 miles than it used to be back when they built these things. That going 60 miles was a bigger deal back then, but it's not that big of a deal anymore. Even 90 miles.
Because in Portland, yeah, we had the Scottish Rite, which is it's funny. Actually, I never made it there. I think, I woke up and then everything kind of went crazy in Portland, and I don't think went and visited the Scottish Rite building, but I know that it's pretty opulent and well kept, and there's a lot of lodges in Portland with Masonic lodges that aren't really dilapidated. Some of them kind of look a little dilapidated, but and Portland's also a hub for a lot of things too. So I'm not surprised that there's a lot of Masonic activity, currently there.
Yeah, it would be great if we ever meet somebody who really, really, really knows. Like, we still have these puzzle pieces. Like, we know that the child trafficking is happening because of Kathy O'Brien. We know that there's like a concerted system of trauma-based mind control. And we know that Carly Noel said that at age 9 or 10, she was repeatedly raped at a Masonic lodge in Southern California and then sent home, and even the cops were in on it. But then people are like, well, maybe she's crazy. So it's like we get these puzzle pieces and they just kind of have to sit there until we understand how it locks together, and you have to be a detective, right? Like when they find human meat in freezers, in warehouses, and we're like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? It's very much a thing of piecing puzzle pieces together sometimes until everything falls into place.
Well, and the Satanists versus the Luciferians, like that whole dynamic, it's been told, I don't know what your thoughts are, what you've heard, but like they're going to be sacrificing like the dark left-handed occultist per se, so the Luciferian light can come forward. And that a lot of those puzzle pieces of these kind of dark rituals will get more exposed. Maybe that's why they kind of like put forth Epstein and kind of give, the sex cult, I forgot the name, the XM or whatever, that came forward. It's all intentional to kind of say here, they like to toy with people too, and also desensitize them. I think that's also a very good desensitizing process for humanity, just to kind of like almost accept, which is sick, but almost accept that is kind of just how it is, for the elites or for how things are governed. Because obviously the masses seem to comply, they don't really want to know, it's kind of obvious at this point, at least what I've seen. But I don't know, have you heard like where like, and I don't know why I find that fascinating that like the dark will be sacrificed in a sense,
right, by itself, and it's all just a shell game. It's like, oh look, it's not here, it's over here.
Well, it's like the Russian dolls.
What's that?
I said it's like the Russian dolls.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's like this winnowing process where things get kind of sorted down to it's like grinding flour or something. But for me with Team Gaia, it's really still about like, you just align completely with love. You align completely with determination. It's not just like light and love and butterflies and puppies. It's like this laser focused determination that we shall, because they all pay lip service to heaven on earth. They pay lip service to the kingdom, but then they create this monstrosity. So when I was little and I would see these double binds and these contradictions, it made me almost autistic, just trying to put it together, trying to understand why people were so hypocritical, basically, like why what they said and what they did were two completely different things. But now I'm like, okay, we have a choice as sovereign individuals as to what core values we're going to select and align with and stand for. Like, and what we say, what something means, we say it means. But there's so much gray area. For instance, for a long time, I had like a Taoistic sign on my Facebook page, and people were like, the Taoistic sign is kind of a false duality. I was trying to bridge the dualities and going, it's all one. And people were like, oh, no, you're actually reinforcing the duality. And I thought, well, you kind of ruined it for me now, but thanks. But it's not like they were wrong. So do you ever find that where you think, oh, great, I've got this new symbol that I really love, a lightning bolt or something. And, like the Grateful Dead heads love this 13 prong lightning bolt. And I love the Grateful Dead heads because they're very heart-based. but then I'm like, oh, a lightning bolt is another one of those Luciferian slash satanic symbols. Yeah, it's a really rough rugby game, and maybe there's like 3 teams.
Maybe or more. Well, and I think like
Or
what you said
more.
earlier, that like, your favorite symbols have been, appropriated to, the dark side too. So it's like our intentions of how we use that. I mean, even the swastika goes back to ancient times. And so, I had that on a political level when I woke up to Zionism, and I put up, I had these patriots like you, I kind of aligned with them, and I put up Free Palestine. It had like the hand going up. And I didn't know, because I'm still very new in everything, right? And so they're all the patriots like, that's Marxist, that's a Marxist sign. And I'm like, but no, it's Free Palestine, And so but then you realize, I mean, especially in the political realm, but it's religious too, that they control everything. So, I mean, that's why, like, I'm going to just be quiet on Zionism, because it's ran by the Marxists. The Marxists are Zionists. It's all kind of, if you trace it back, it all kind of goes to the same place.
Controlled
And so,
opposition. Yeah.
So yeah, but that was my first encounter of people kind of coming at me for something that I was like, well, wait, I'm like, but then of course the conservatives didn't like that I was pro-Palestine. So they're probably already coming at me for, everything else.
Right. So there's so many shades, because of course the Q people are like, yes, of course we understand that Israel's a war criminal. And yes, we understand that the deep state has been running the US government. And that's why there were sex slaves and needless wars and psyops like 9/11. And at the same time, yeah, you still have people who are like, oh no, Israel's our greatest ally. Or then there's other people saying, well, Israel's going to be saved for last. It's like very, very confusing out there. And it's sort of like shaking that jar of ants. And then the ants are like all freaking out trying to rebuild, but they, don't know where to put things.
Well, but speaking of rebuilding, did you hear about the red heifers that were delivered to Israel?
Red heifers?
Oh yeah. I gotta hold on, I have to turn on some lights. I subscribe to, because I like to keep track of what's going on. Sorry. This will help. Ooh, light. I subscribe to Israel 365, and I confirmed it because they said, I heard other people talking about it, but yeah, there was like, I think 5 red heifers that were delivered to Israel a couple days ago, and they have to be burned, which I'm a vegetarian, so it makes me sad, but they have to burn them. And it's been like 2,000 years since they found a full red heifer, and that they're going to be burned. So the ashes of those red heifers are a necessary prerequisite for the ground of the third temple. So they're getting very serious about this third temple being built. And the fact that those red heifers were delivered, and I felt it, but mind you, I didn't say this, because after this accident, I was a lot more in tune. Like it took me about a week to come back in my body and to be in the 3D. Like I was not in the 3D. Like, I mean, I'd go barefoot. I stayed in my house for like a week. Like very, very sensitive to energy and just the 3D realm and the temporary aspect of life. But I felt at that time, I still do, that the Antichrist was rising. Now we hear it all the time, but I felt the rumblings, like whatever it is. I don't know exactly how it's going to manifest. But then when I heard that the red heifers got delivered to Israel, I was like, oh, okay, like then that's kind of what I was tapping into,
Yeah,
because
somebody's following prophecy. Even the people who say that there's nothing to be believed, clearly you don't just do something like that accidentally or randomly.
No. And what that's going to mean, and then they're also, I think it was this year, like the church of like, was it Islam and Catholicism? I mean, they're all converging together. This year they were making that, I forgot, Chrislam, I think it's called.
Oh
right?
My gosh.
So that's this year too. So there's a lot of agendas, obviously kind of coming in for each of these, 2023 and 2023 is, 322 backwards. I'm a numbers person. So next year is going to be, I think, a pretty important year. I mean, every year coming up to, I think, 2030 in particular, but, and then I keep hearing about 9/23, September 23rd, and September 23rd of this year was exactly 222 days from the Super Bowl. So there's an energy frequency to this September 23rd. I mean, other ones, nothing's ever happened, and so I don't know in the next couple of days, I guess it is going to be next Friday, or this Friday is September 23rd. I don't like living in fear, but I do think that there's going to be even if we don't see it in the news, but there's some type of energy frequency, because it was 222 days from the Super Bowl. And you and I both know the Super Bowl is a huge ritual that they do. So I don't know your thoughts on that or what you.
Well, I definitely, so I think that things like your accident could be just cosmic confirmation and sacred numbers showing up. But when you have a Super Bowl where the halftime show several years before COVID was of like a children's ward with a bunch of beds, there was this weird, or was it at the Olympics?
That was the Olympics. That was the 2012 Olympics.
But just the fact that somebody choreographed something and bought a bunch of props and hired a bunch of dancers. And so there's literally something physically, there are people making their living creating these strange psyops and these weird rituals, like that's their theater career, is to create rituals for the Super Bowl. Very, very strange. So seems like there's a lot of players in this frequency war trying to take the ball and claim the high ground and go, it's ours. And the ball that they're fighting over, in my opinion, is the sovereign soul, aka Gaia. You know, that what's gonna be the reality on this planet? What's going to be the use of these goddess love energies? Is she compromised? Is she being used and falsely worshipped by dark pagans? Or is there a sovereignty involved? So most of my girlfriends are very much all about, certainly goddess is real and earth is deserving of respect and not just lip service, like love the earth, kill yourself, which seems to be the Illuminati agenda, right? Like be ashamed of being human, stop breathing, stop emitting carbon.
Well, the Club of Rome, you know, since the Club of Rome started the sustainability movement and they're a bunch of billionaires, like, I mean, it's just, and it's hard because I say that to people and it's like, when you go higher up in intelligence, and not even necessarily intelligence, but higher knowledge, right? Not just like talking points of sustainability, people, you lose them. Like they don't really want to know the sources of things, you know? And so it's sad.
Who's doing the social engineering? That's the question everyone should be asking.
Yeah.
Who are the social engineers?
Exactly. It's I was gonna say something when you were talking about Gaia and energy.
People are hired, this is their work to create these events.
Well, that's very fascinating. I loved how you put that, you know, because it's like, even for me, I never would have thought about, and not to say he is, but like, you know, being a stunt guy, right? But it made me think, maybe not in my situation, but I guarantee you, I bet that they use stunt guys to cause accidents. I never thought that before.
Somebody who knows how to drive and knows how to work those things. And and stunt people need work. It's really sad that, because I was always an arts geek and a theater geek, to think that the few careers in the arts could be in service to the government and national security, quote unquote.
Well, the CIA has a headquarters, or not their headquarters, but, you know, they have a branch, you know, they say it's for like, you know, national security, but, you know, it's a lot more, you know, in Hollywood, you know, so they're definitely in partnership openly, but you know, obviously I think there's more. What I forgot to say, or what I wanted to say when we were talking about the warfares, or like, you know, the different is, I got this book called Bringers of the Dawn. Someone gave it to me at Shangri-La, and that ties in, and I haven't gone down that route, that ties into the Pleiadians, and then like you can get into the Dracos. And I find that interesting in the sense that where I've gone in the rabbit hole is, you know, you can go back to the Canaanites, Samaria, you know, way past Egypt, and then it kind of drops off in the sense that like, then it kind of goes off into, you get into more of like the ETs, you know, the different constellations, the Draco, the reptilians, and then you have these Pleiadians. I'm going to read this book. I only had a couple pages, so I can't really talk about it, but I think that's an interesting.
I'd love to find out what you do find out, because I haven't read the book, but I definitely know it was one of those flagship books for light workers. It was sort of like Dolores Cannon's work in saying, yes, you're here for a reason. You were born for a reason. There's a planetary transition going on, and you were born to help with it. That's what Bringers of the Dawn is about, is people remembering like their star origins and the reason why we're here.
And I got that after the accident. This guy gave it to me at the Shangri-La Festival.
Even though that book's like 30 years old now.
I know, and I never heard of it, like, because I'm not really, that wasn't necessarily my forte, was much more into the Mossad and the meat of like what's going on. I mean, I'm a Scorpio, I like spiritual things, but my focus has been definitely more in like the physical realm, in a sense. And so I thought it was kind of pointless to be truthful to like, the Draco, like, and it was funny because this person who I don't talk to anymore, but he was mad one time. He's like, I'm the seed of Cain and come from Draco constellation or Draco lineage or something. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, like good for you, dude. Like, but I also felt like a demon saying that, to be truthful. Like, and he's in the entertainment industry. And then, you get into like their rituals and like, this is a little bit more dark, but the portal of demonic energy that they use is the anus, right? And I don't know all about that. Probably don't want to go into too much detail learning about it, but I mean, they're compromised.
It's so strange. I wonder if these are all just the little power tools that we invent that we design when we come into a third density world without our superpowers from the heavenly realms that we came from. We start trying to find like biological hacks. And so, sodomy turned into a biological hack. Fasting is a biological hack for the light side. Sacrifice is a biological hack, right?
What do you mean by biological hacks?
I mean, workarounds. The fact that we're in a third dimensional world with 8th and 12th dimensional souls means that we're trying to repurpose the stuff that we've been given on this desert isle called Earth life. We try and find things that we can turn that will give us more power than just 3D existence. In other words, in the 3D, if you want to go someplace, you have to cross space and time. You can do it with your feet, you can do it on a horse, you can do it on a bicycle or a car or whatever. But in the dimensions that we come from, you could travel with thought. So when we have biological hacks, it means ways to circumvent space, time, and personal power.
Interesting.
Using what we have here. So they found that by killing an innocent and spilling that blood, that was a hack that would give them a dimensional doorway, right? Or that by following intuition, you could find a sacred spring, and that was a dimensional doorway. So like both teams have been trying to like open dimensional doorways. CERN is like a biological hack. They're trying to do some sort of an end run. It's sort of like in a game where you learn a certain code, a cheat code. It's like cheat codes where you learn a certain code and suddenly your bank account fills up. These Illuminati probably have certain cheat codes besides just opening businesses that each other frequents, and they have cheat codes for wealth.
But I think that, what are your thoughts on this? And so, like I said, my therapist had, kind of comforted. I don't know if it was comforting he was trying to. He's not very comforting per se. He's very truthful in his delivery to me, and he's occulted. So, but he said to me, and it goes back to what you were saying about the innocent blood being shedded. And I was going to bring that up to him next time I talked with him, because he said, for you to be a pure sovereign soul, for them to come at you would be a huge karmic, it breaks natural law, right? Like there's huge karmic repercussions about doing that. So how do they, because he said, especially on a one-on-one basis, when they use soldiers to, embody that karmic law when they go to war, possibly with 9/11, all the military that was involved, like it falls on them. He goes, but with a one-on-one hit, it's more, it has to do with, natural law. But I said, well, yeah, they could just hire some tweaker guy to do the job or whatever, and that would fall on them. So, and he goes, no, he was kind of, steadfast on his position on that. But I forgot to ask him, but what about the sacrifices of children? Like they're pure too. I mean, aren't they racking up tons of like natural karmic law by doing these biological hacks?
Yes. And the way I'm feeling about it is it's sort of like, okay, it's like if you were growing up and you had an older sibling that like had you in a lock, In other words, they were able to blackmail you and control you because they knew you had stolen a cookie or something. And so every time that, you know, you were about to get free, they would just remind you that they had the goods on you. It only works in a tiny, tiny context. I don't think that in the court of cosmic law, any of their little workarounds are actually going to hold up. But because they had somehow isolated Earth from God's eye, or people had chosen teams where they were hiding from God because they hadn't accepted Christ. I mean, I'm not quite sure how they got away with this for as long as they did, knowing that we have an omnipotent God. Was God looking the other way? Was God in on it? Was God working against its own best interests because God was having low self-esteem? Like, we don't really know how they got away with it for so long. But part of how they got away with it was making people believe that somehow they were getting away with it. But they're always on borrowed time because they're absolutely breaking cosmic law. There's no way to justify not just sacrificing children, but farming them. You know what I mean? Like, they have ladies giving birth to children just for this purpose. They have families selling their children just for this purpose because they're broke. And they're actually hired to be like baby farm families. Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's no way that once this thing hits cosmic court that any of this is going to hold up. And this is why I kind of hope and believe that there are white hats, that there really is a conspiracy of light just backing these guys into a corner. And that's kind of what we're waiting for, is waiting for them to kind of do their final freak out before everything's revealed. Apocalypse does mean unveiling. So.
And then I just read a post, someone said it was really interesting. I've heard it before, but that the white hats, of course, it's more, of a Debbie Downer thing, but the white hats really is just Lucifer, right? So it's the light coming forth. So it's hard to say. And I also heard an interesting thing too, that like the light that we see at the end of the tunnel when we die, is that just a false light, that like kind of like poltergeist, where we just get sucked back into this. And I was listening to the Dark Journalist a couple of days ago. I normally don't listen to his stuff, but it was very fascinating because he was talking about the Armanon, whatever, from like Atlantis, like the old. So it still had to do with the duality of the two. It had Lucifer, and then it had Armanon. I'm not saying it correctly.
Oh, Ahriman.
Yeah. And like, that's what he said. And then he talked about the eighth sphere, and that's what they're wanting to do, is to cycle us back into the eighth sphere. And when we have that biodigital convergence, right, that it's going to get people, into the eighth sphere, where they just recycle back into this realm, or into, I just find it fascinating. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on it because I'm,
it is fascinating. I really feel like at the end of the day, sovereignty of a core nature, that way, no matter what realm you find yourself in, you've got these core values.
Yes.
Even if you found yourself being recycled, you would have presence of mind. I also very much believe that our will frequency keeps them from being able to win. How do I say this? It's like, if I feel like we're having a frequency war on the planet. So everything that they do wants to feed into helplessness, learned helplessness, feeling overwhelmed, feeling outclassed, outgunned. And then there's this tiny little glimmer of, yeah, but I am. And when you get right back to that I am, and you don't deviate, and by I am, I think it really means that I exist and I am I. And everything else is kind of window dressing, and they can turn it, and it's like a snake that is trying to get out of our clutches by weaving back and forth, but we've got it right behind the gills, and it's going to thrash around. But the fact is that we've got a hold on it. And if we are very clear in our intentionality that no, nothing terrible is going to happen because it's our watch and we have the quantum higher ground. But boy, it's hard to maintain that when everything around us in the matrix reality, this thing is like twisting and turning back upon itself, you know, and making us want to doubt truth. And
Exactly.
I feel like that's kind of why Christianity can be helpful if you come to Jesus with an independent mind, because basically Jesus said, number one, straight up, death ain't no thing. Don't let anybody use the fear of death and hold it over your head, because it ain't a thing.
I agree. And I love the I am. I also see it being inverted by Satanists or the narcissist of I am, right? So it's always that.
You is thou wilt, blah, blah. Yeah.
You know, and I see the nature of a lot of, I guess you would say Satanists, or like that, just they serve the self, right? So you have those that serve the self, and then those that want to serve others. So that's also the duality of people, you know?
Right. So you've heard of the raw law of one kind of work. I haven't read it deeply, but I do know that they draw the line with service to self and service to others. And it's not that you don't take care of yourself, but that your main priority is the good of the whole, the good of oneness, that your eyes are on God, as it were, and the God of your own understanding.
Sorry, I have to keep moving because my house, I'm like, I love dark light.
It's all getting dark. Ooh, let's show us your sunset.
I love it. Like I have a little,
yeah. That's so good.
What was I going to say about the law of oneness? Oh, and serving self. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's like I've, you know, in the last couple of years, I mean, I'm an only child, so I can totally be selfish. I don't want to say that I'm, you know, super altruistic, but there's been circumstances that have tested me, you know, and even like with the fires in Oregon, you know, I made like memorials for people because I cared. I saw their suffering, you know, and, you know, there's so much division happening now. And I've gotten so mad at people's ignorance, or, you know, you get mocked so many times. But yet, going back to that lady in that car that, you know, her car could have blown up. She was just a human. I didn't care about her political belief systems. You know, I didn't care if she took the vax or not. Like, it was just like a human being that was suffering. And there's just so many people that I think in the truthing movement who are pretty self-centered, and they just kind of type away, you know, just type away. And this the last couple of years has really made me like, what do I believe? When you say you go back to self, like, you know, your intentions, like I had to be tested for that. It wasn't just like, well, I believe this and I believe that. It's like, well, do you? Because you're going to have to make a choice, you know? And I had to go with what I felt was right in every situation. And that meant a lot of sacrifice, but for the good, I have to admit, I shed away.
Your gut and your heart. It's like, do you listen to your heart? You know, do you listen to your gut? So your gut and your heart, if you're aligned, are always going to take you to the place of the highest good for the most. I don't know. It's a mystery. It's a mystery how things work out so well sometimes. Isn't it great though?
It is.
You know, and you could be taking you could have turned your wheels a different direction. You could have not tuned in. You could have not said, okay, you know, you could have not surrendered. You could have freaked out, but something in your heart and your gut, you've been cultivating for long enough that you just went straight to core. I guess, you know, instead of saying yourself, you go straight to core, because that core of you is connected with the core of everything, source. And that's why it's game over. The moment we go back to source in our being, game over. You can't be, it doesn't fucking matter whether we're recycled endlessly, because we're just going to come back and do more creative shit. You know, sometimes, yeah, we want to break, or we imagine that there's like a better ride we could take. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot be oppressed if you can go back to source, because that's game over.
Well, and I think too, hold on a second, I got to get up here because this is kind of, oh, let me not get hit. Oh, there we go. This will do it. I'll sit at my table. Is that sorry.
When you go back to source, it's game over. If you can go to the core of your being.
And that's totally what I did when I surrendered and said okay. And it was amazing how expansive that is. Like, it's very, very expansive energy. I mean, even like I said, I went above my car psychologically or energetically, my consciousness went above. So it's very, it's very true. And, I think not for me, and I'm kind of talking to myself as I say this, but not to walk in fear, because it's so easy for me to go, oh my gosh, I spoke a lot about Zionism. And I mean, and it's like, I know I don't hold a lot of any worldly power, but oh no, or maybe I talked to the attorney general and, he didn't like that joke and he put a word out, and, it's so easy to get paranoid. And then I'm living in fear and I'm not connected to that source. And I don't want to live my life like that, and as the times come, and as, 223 comes and 224 is how I look at numbers, 225, we're going to be more tested. We're going to, I think, have to continue to go back to source when we make these decisions,
Yeah.
How are we going to look? And love is the answer. And it sounds so cliche. And I'm a more truthful person. I aligned more with truth than I did with love, if I was going to say energetically.
Yes, I actually call God truth love, or love truth. In other words, the frequency of love plus the frequency of truth together. So it's like truth with compassion, compassion with standards. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
Just pure love is non-discriminating, and that could be powerful, but love plus discrimination, like determination, is truly, for me, that's like the essence of God. So I feel like so many people are like, ooh, don't use that word. It's so patriarchal. It's going to be associated with like a Jehovah image. And I'm like always encouraging people to find the level of your connection with the divine that is truly authentic for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's looking at a flower, or whether it's, standing in a thunderstorm, or like whatever your connection is that gets you there. It's the there that's important. It's not the name on it for me.
Yep. It's that feeling, like I like you said, thunderstorm, because I'm in thunderstorm country, and the mightiness of it all, or the rain, like was it Bob Marley's, quote of, some just get wet, some feel the rain, and it's so true,
Did I just see a little kitty tail?
Like kitty cats, yeah, they're like, what's mama doing?
I love it. So good. Wow. Well, thank you so much for reaching out today. I'm assuming you reached out to a lot of friends to tell your story, because it was really quite miraculous. And although you could worry about, as you mentioned before, connections that your mother might have had to the occult, or maybe you've been marked in some way that they're, watching you and marking you and tagging you. I think all of us light workers are tagged in some way by the fact that we have a light that shines from within. So
the
we
shine, as they call it,
shines from within.
Yeah, but don't they have a term like the shine? Like I keep the shining ones, like, or the shine. I don't
Right,
know.
for sure. There's like a little star at your third eye, and your heart. We walk in that. So of course we're going to be marked to some degree. But what else were we going to do? We came here to create beauty. So that's just how it is. And apparently creating beauty requires badasses. Who knew?
Very true. Very true.
Wow.
I'm humble because, beauty comes in many forms. And, I got my front tooth came out. I have a cap on it, and I had to walk around with no front tooth for a while. And this was just a month ago. So I feel like the universe is testing me. And I smiled in the camera. I was like, you know what? Who cares, right? Babylon beauty, whatever. But the beauty I know that you speak of is way deeper than Babylon beauty, or just what the world holds up. But it was a good test. You know what I mean? Of going past what they say. And I agree with you.
Yeah, that's much deeper beauty anyway, like the ability to make someone smile, the ability to bring laughter. I mean, let's say you looked like a Billy Bob for 10 minutes. It's like, yeah. If it made somebody smile and it opened their heart just a little bit, that's beauty.
Exactly.
No, I'm talking about some serious beauty for sure. Deep intrinsic beauty.
I love it. Well, let me know if you come up with anything on the 26th. I think that's 206. If you happen to see any things on that, even if
Oh,
it is.
yeah, exactly. So if you're watching this video, guys, you want to research the number 206 and put it in the comments. That would be super awesome. There's a few numbers that we threw around, but the 206 is still the one that we're kind of wondering about. And that's the number that they reported in the newspaper as being the time that the first accident happened.
Yes.
So we'll see what that's all about. Yay.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, it was
Thanks.
fun.
Yeah.
We went a little
thank
bit past
you.
the accident, but I guess everything is past like the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm excited. I really think you're going to have two major dreams in the next week. Like they're going to be big and they're going to be soon. And just write them down. And I think it's going to steer you onto a path of becoming an even more effective healing agent on the planet than you already even were.
Well, thank you. I will definitely keep that. And I have dream catchers all above my bed. So, and I have to admit, since those dream catchers have gone in, I've definitely had even more dreams, you know, and yeah, so.
It's all about intentionality. That was you telling your guide, okay, I'm willing to get messages in my dreams.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And one last thing, I know but I want to share this because it speaks of like, you know, Native American stuff, but I had put these guys up, and these are from like tribes in South Dakota. And same with these guys up here.
I noticed those. I noticed all of them and wondered.
Yeah, when I got them, in South Dakota, just when I went to the Black Hills. But what was interesting is when I put them up in May, I got locked out of my house that night, and there was a huge storm, and it could have been a tornado because here there's tornadoes. And I didn't know what to do. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I had to pry open one of my windows, and I got in. Thank goodness, and I felt like it was a test of my warrior spirit. Like I put up those warrior vibes. I had that night to do like a warrior situation. What are you going to do? Because I mean, it's like, you know, the storms here in the Midwest are no joke. You know, I'm from the West Coast, so I'm not used to these like Midwest storms. So I just think, you know, objects, as you know, have power. And so same with those dream catchers. And I think
those objects definitely have power and deserve a lot of respect for sure. And so you had to pay a price to be able to be worthy of having those, you know?
Yeah.
Because
you're right.
Yeah, because you just you're saying with your intention and your objects that you want to be empowered, and so they're like, okay, well, the best way to build power is to be tested.
But for the universe, I kind of want to chill for now, so hopefully I can chill for a little bit. Words are powerful, so I'm saying that out.
Yes, now is the time for you to absorb the lessons.
Yes. It is. So, well, I appreciate you holding space and having this conversation. It's been really organic, and I just have thoroughly enjoyed it, and all the different areas that we kind of covered. And thank you. I can't do both hands. Hold on, let me try to do both hands.
Yeah, right. Namaste with the phone. All right. Thank you so much. It was a real privilege to be able to help midwife you through some of this processing.
Great way of putting it. Totally. Okay. Well, thank you.
Great to touch base with you.
Great to touch base with you.
Okay, I'll show you when the video is ready.
Okay, cool. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.